You'll hear Giancarlo Calzetta talk. He's a journalist, a colleague. He will talk about how actually open source is under attack. We're quite curious.
Here we are. They told me to stay very close to the mic, but I think it's very loud. But they told me so. So your hearers are in danger, but it's not my fault. First of all, make an applause to the moderator of the day, because it's the whole day doing this job. And why I'm asking you to do that before the start of my talk is because I'm the last one, so I can keep on talking for a couple of hours or something like that. And I'm about to ask to close the doors so you can stay with me as long as I want instead of you. So I'm Giancarlo Calzetta. As you can see from my presentation, I like a low-profile figure of myself. I'm a journalist. I'm actually editor. I'm a director for Security Info. I'm a contributor for the Sole 24 Ore, and I'm director for the business-to-business part of Tom's Hardware. So yeah, I'm a nerd, as you can maybe understand from my shirt. Open source is one of the best things ever. Okay, I'm old enough to say that I saw a lot of early times of the open source. It was great at the beginning. It's getting greater and greater. Mainly because, well, in open source you can get great everything, great software, great design, great hardware, great way to share knowledge. That is the most important thing today. It's basically the biggest opportunity for open source projects today. But you all that, and a lot of people out there are taking maybe too much from the open source. There are a lot of leechers, a lot of work in exchange of very little rewards. There are a lot of complaining users, with pull requests and these kind of things. Everyone is expecting maybe too much, but this is not the real problem. This is this means success. Okay, when you are successful, you get all the things you saw there. Of course, in open source, since you are not, it's nerd thing, you don't get all the blame from the social, but in some cases you manage to get those also. And this is good. Okay, because you make the life better to a lot of people, you create hype and involvement, you make the difference in several fields. And there are a lot of people that are grateful out there, but they're silent. What's the problem there? The vampires are the problem. There are the companies that are big companies that don't do enough for open source. This is a position that is very common and well known in the open source community. They grab everything they can, giving very little in exchange. Okay, they build their software on open source libraries and these kind of things. But they forget one thing. Everybody knows this, right? Okay. Now imagine that very little piece with the arrow pointing at that is something tall, at least like the Empire State Building, and each of this piece is exactly vital like that one, and that's the actual situation out there. The infrastructure of the internet itself is full of this stuff. The software for the enterprises is full of open source libraries. The devices out there are full of firmware made out of open source libraries or snippets or everything you can find online. That's cool because you can create a lot of very cool things, very cool devices for any use with very little effort. But you got a situation like that. And that situation is incredible because you build your interesting, defense perimeter, and then something like Log4Shell comes in. I don't know how many of you remember the disaster of Log4Shell. Log4Shell has been the nightmare before Enterprise Christmas. Okay, it was in 2022. Right, I didn't put the the time there, but Well, basically, on the 9th of December, a vulnerability in a piece of software that was acting like that has been discovered and published after the patch has been released. But patching is extremely difficult in this kind of environment because it's not something that you apply on your product, but it's something that is embedded in other product that you use, and then someone else has to patch. Admittedly, they still take care of the product, admittedly that they know about the problem, admittedly they remember they used that piece of software somewhere. The vulnerability was rated 10 out of 10, and the first reaction in the enterprise were panic complete, because are we vulnerable? Well, the answer arrived quite quickly, because on the 10th of December the attacks started. The mass attacks started, because some of those attacks already happened before the info release about the vulnerability. And 1 year later, this is the most interesting thing of all this stuff, the 50% of vulnerable servers that were vulnerable on the 9th of December were still there. They were still there. Most of them were not in the enterprises, of course, but that means that out there is full of devices and computers and stuff that nobody takes care of. And what happens there? They become part of botnets, and well, they got a quite interesting life for being devices that nobody takes care about. And what that means? Well, this is the real situation of open source. Everybody take and forget. This is good. I need this piece of software for doing a log into my server. Well, log4j is there. It's a good idea. Let's take it. I need an encoder or a video decoder for my project. FFmpeg is there. Wonderful. I'll use it. By the way, do you know that Windows video stuff is based almost entirely on FFmpeg? Do you know that something like 2 years ago, they had a problem with an implementation of FFmpeg, and they asked the community to patch them without getting directly involved. We will pay you for patch this stuff because it's messing up some stuff in Windows. Why didn't they get a developer of them get involved into the project? It will basically work better than giving a few bucks to someone that maybe is not the most effective way to do the things. Anyhow, the problem is that at the end of the day, after the release of the vulnerability, the vendors of security started investigating the issue. They found that 2/3 of all servers analyzed by Akamai was running vulnerable instances of log4j. 91% of the data centers they analyzed were executing server-side Java apps. More than 40% of that, a lot of things. The situation was a mess, basically. You can find some data, because data are always fancy in these kind of things, just to make some terrorism on the people. But this is not the point. Terrorism, putting some fear around is good, because they make people think. But this is a very precise kind of problem. That is a vulnerability in open source. It's bad. It's out of open source with vulnerability issues out there. There's the false myth that open source is more secure than closed source because everybody can look at that. But the problem is, are they looking at that? Do you know how many open source projects are out there? Do you know how many people the IT industry lacks to run the usual stuff in companies and enterprise? So how many people really have free time to spare for doing that stuff? Very little. So the most of the open source projects are in danger on that side. But that shouldn't be your problem. That should be the problem of the guys that choose to incorporate the libraries and these kind of things. Because if you spare a lot of time using these open source libraries, take a look at them, okay, before using them. And first of all, remember you're using them. Put in some check to verify if any update is made on that. Okay, not just use and forget. But there are worse scenarios. XZ backdoor. XZ is a utility for compression of data. Okay. Well, it happened something really bad, and let's be clear. God looked down and said, "Guys, you really don't learn. You need help with this stuff." You can't learn, I'll do something for you. What happened? He sent an angel to the ground, a weird one, very skilled, and it happened to be a Microsoft researcher. So it's some kind of, counterposition for the what we said about FFmpeg. What happened? Well, this person was running on a SHA somewhere, a shell, and he realized that when he launched the shell, it took 500 milliseconds too much to run. It took half a second longer than usual to just open, to just pop up. 500 milliseconds, half a second. This man needs help. I hope it's an angel from God, because otherwise it really helps. What happened? He started looking at the code. He went very deep in the code to find out that the code has been compromised with a rat, with a remote access Trojan inside the code. How that code arrived there? It was not a vulnerability, it was an attack. What we said before, that everybody use open source stuff, is gold for criminals and state-born attacks. And what did they do? They chose this project and started to mess around with that. They started to blame this low response of the main curator of the project. They hunted for bugs so they can complain about them. They put a psychological pressure on the curator of the project to stress him out, just stress him out. And then what happened? When from the community arrived a savior. Hey, man, what about a hand? You know, I've been involved in the project for a while now. It's an year and a half now. I always had a positive attitude for the project. I shared a lot about this project. You saw all the hands I gave here in coding and solving stuff from time to time. What about adding me as a co-curator, as an administrator of the project? The problem was that he isn't a savior. He was another guy from the crew that was attacking the project that infiltrated the project. So he could basically do what he wanted to, put the Trojan there, piece by piece, not all in at once, piece by piece. And when he basically activated that, well, the angel came with 2 weeks late from the very beginning of this attack, because the Trojan has been there unseen for 2 weeks. But, well, it went well. Now, the problem is how many other open source projects has been infiltrated? How many menaces like this are out there? I don't know. Nobody knows. The only things you should care about is to know, because it's the only thing that we can rely on. Knowledge. Know that when you do a very nice piece of software, if it gets successful, it can become a weapon. Think of that. Bye.
Thank you very much. Since it was actually the last session, if you have questions, we can use the next few minutes in order to take them, but otherwise, you're free to go.
We got questions?
No. Okay.
We got a question.
Oh, yes, we do.
Do you know if there is some answer to this risk? I don't know, some project that is deploying some way to react.
No, this is, security is basically made by two things: procedures and technology. Technology here is completely useless because it's a pure social engineering attack. And then what saves you? Procedures. Okay, you want to accept the help from somebody. Nice move. Keep an eye on that. Don't forget. Don't throw the software and forget, because now there's the new guy that takes care of it. From time to time, if you're tired with your project, give an eye anyhow on the update and changes. It's true that if you put the code inside, little by little, you don't see the changes, but once it's all together, you'll see that. Like the MS Angel did, anybody else that is very good at that can do that, okay? Especially if it's your project after all. If you see any major overhaul, for example, of a project proposed by the newcomer, it's just it's not been actually a checklisted properly. Maybe someone should do that. Why don't you?